What's up, everybody? Very, very exciting. This could potentially be our very last actual build video for the truck. Now that we wrapped up getting the air side of our AquaHot system installed, it is time to do plumbing in the truck. So we are going to have hot and cold water to our sink and hot and cold water to our shower, which we've never been able to say. We didn't have running water like this in our van, let alone hot water. So to start this off, we're actually going to get our faucet and our sink installed. We have a big, gorgeous 19 by 21 Ruvati sink we're going to be putting here. It's an awesome stainless steel sink. We had a smaller version in our van. So we're really excited to have that in here as well. So first up is going to be figuring out how to mount our faucet. Here's a quick overview of what our sink cabinet / countertop. As you can see, everything is pre-cut into the counter via the CNC company, but we did have to make a few minor alterations to get everything to fit perfectly. First up was getting all the faucet fittings and washers ready to go for mounting to the counter. Thankfully, the braided steel lines coming out of the faucet were standard and easy to find fittings for. We got really lucky with the faucet and sink placement. The faucet itself was actually super close to not working with our turn window assembly, and these are just the little things in a build that you simply cannot account for, but they usually work out. A huge shout out to Ruvati for believing in us on this new truck project of ours. Last night you saw us installing our sink. The sink doesn't run yet because we don't have plumbing lines. Tonight at 8:15 at night we decided we wanted to start plumbing. I've never done any plumbing before, so thankfully by doing the Pex A stuff it seems like it's going to be the simplest way possible. So the first thing we need to do is we are actually going to run our hot water line underneath the sink, from underneath the sink all the way over to below the countertop here. So the reason we're starting with the hot water line is because our water filtration setup is going right in here in this cabinet, and if I put the filtration setup in here I actually wouldn't be able to reach behind it to do our hot water line. When we had the cabinets designed, we had these 1-inch channels drilled all the way through the cabinet to run the plumbing lines because we knew we couldn't put them behind our walls. So I'm going to pull our hot water line from the sink cabinet to the laundry cabinet right now, get a feel for the length. You probably can't see. Here's the hot water line. It's going to be running along the ground. And we actually need to get it up about 12 inches so that it can run over our filtration setup. So we're going to have a 90-degree elbow on the Pex A down here. That's going to be sitting on the ground so that we can redirect the plumbing line up to here. So that's going to be our first step. Cutting the pipe, putting a fitting on, and expanding it so we could put this first elbow on. So here's our first opener fitting. I've already cut the pipe. You want to cut the pipe as square as possible so that it sits flat in the expansion fitting. There's only one way it can go on, so just kind of pop it on, press down, and I've been checking all around the inside of the pipe to make sure it's sitting flat with the opener fitting. And here's my 90-degree elbow. This is why Pex A is so great. This fitting will not fit inside of the tubing right now. This is where the expansion tool comes in. It will expand the pipe open to be able to insert the brass fitting in, and then when you hold it nice and tight for about 30 seconds, it'll close down, and voila, you have your watertight connection while still allowing this to spin. Tool's ready to go. I got my collar on. I got my half-inch cone on. It's all greased up, ready to go. Seems like most people do 8 to 10 expansions, so I'm going to do 9. Make sure the fitting slides over it, and then we'll be good to go. Alright, and then we just let it compress on down. So here's our first elbowed fitting for Pex A. Cool thing is, I don't need to worry about the direction of the elbow because it does spin around in there. So we're going to slide this into the cabinet and take our first look. So now that we have our low line set up with the 90-degree elbow, I already know how high I need to go for the filtration system, which is 12 inches. So I cut this tube to the length I need. I need to expand this end to slide it onto this 90 here. So that's what we're going to do, is expand this, slide it onto here, and that will be our first complete elbow. And there's our first 90-degree elbow. Here's our filtration setup. We are very lucky to be working with ClearSource on this massive Ultra 3-stage filtration setup. So the first canister is a rust sediment blocker, so if you get it from a questionable pipe or water source, it'll help with that. The second is a carbon filter to help with taste, and then the third filter is their patented virus guard, which helps with bacteria and viruses that you want to remove from your water so you don't get an upset stomach or health issues. So this thing is quite large, and we have a perfect spot for it. It's going to be going right in the bottom of that cabinet there. So this is why we installed that elbow in the bottom, because this hot water line is going to be running over the top of the ClearSource. So I wanted to have that elbow in and dialed before ClearSource ever went in. We've never done plumbing, and this is fun. Like, people say electrical's fun. I think that this is also kind of fun. But also this is like the easy part. We haven't hooked up the pump or anything.
Opener.
So here's our next line. We have our elbow back here that's coming up and over our ClearSource filtration system. This one's going to be fed in from the couch. So we just need to hook the long end up down there to our brass elbow. So here's our hot water out. I'm pointing at it with the end of the PEX tube. This is the connection we need to make. This is actually a PEX B 90 elbow. So when we get over here, we're going to be using a crimp style fitting. But to get there, we're trying to figure out the best way possible. So our hot water is coming from inside of the sink galley here. The plan is I think we're going to drop it down, connect with an elbow here, run it all the way through this stuff. And then we have an elbow already on here. We're going to put a short piece here, and then there's going to be an elbow here. That's going to bring us towards the AquaHot unit, and then we're going to have an elbow on the ground that brings us up to the AquaHot unit. So on ClearSource, we decided to get it without any fittings from ClearSource themselves. And the reason for that is because at first I wasn't sure how we were going to be doing the plumbing. Well, now I do. Since we're doing Pex A, I had to pick up special fittings. So if you get your ClearSource Ultra 3-canister filtration setup empty, like we did, this is a 3/4 inch FPT, so it's a female NPT. So for us, we have a Pex A barb on one side to 3/4 inch male NPT, so that it threads into here. So it's threading into ClearSource, of course with pipe tape, and then the other side is Pex A expansion barb. So for where ClearSource is going, we actually have quite a tight space. We only have about 3.5 inches to the wall. With 1/2 inch Pex A, you're allowed to have a 2-inch pipe length at minimum. So that is what we're going to need to do. We're going to need to cut, I'm going to probably cut slightly over 2 inches just in case the collar's not perfect and I need to recut. But yeah, we're going to cut a 2-inch pipe length, and then we're going to expand it and put our elbow on. Making these short little water lines can be tricky. The shorter the pipe, the harder I found it to cut a square edge, and weirdly enough, I was having a much more difficult time getting square cuts with the blue cold water line versus the red hot water lines. It was honestly super satisfying working with the Pex A tubing, and here's the final product, Pex A 3/4 inch MPT on one side to 1/2 inch Pex A elbow on the other. Alright, so now that we have our Teflon tape wrap on, we did 3 wraps, we're going to thread it on to our ClearSource unit. So we're going to hand tighten it. Once it's hand tightened, we're going to hit it with the wrench. Probably going to do about a turn and a half and see where we're at. Since we are using brass threaded fittings going into ClearSource, which has plastic fittings, you want to be super careful not to overstress the threads, which could cause leaking issues. And it's going to lay on its back. We did 2 or so turns until it felt very snug, and if we pressurized the system and there were some small leaks, we know we just need to tighten it a little bit more. Alrighty, good morning guys. It is 6 hours after we went to sleep. I was kind of plumbing and figuring things out till about midnight last night. I was just too excited. But as you can see, we're working on the sink now. I got a little excited and I already did the hot water to the sink. But I promised y'all that we would do this step by step. I'm going to show you how to do the cold water side this time around. So under here I have my braided tubing coming off the sink with a 3/8 compression fitting. So to go from the Sinks 3/8 compression to Pex A, I bought this awesome shutoff valve online. I already put my Pex A on, as you can see, but there's a Pex A barb on this side with a shutoff valve here, and then this is 3/8 compression. So literally, this will thread straight into my faucet's braided line, and now I have my Pex conversion with an elbow already on it. So we're gonna thread this on, figure out the height we need, and then we're gonna make our descending piece of Pex A that's gonna lower itself down to the main line. The cool thing about these compression fittings coming out of the braided lines of the faucet is that they have rubber gaskets for leak prevention inside, which means you don't need to pipe tape these. We have our little mini line set up here off of our faucet line. And now what we need to do is we need to connect the cold line coming from the couch, the tank, the main line into the faucet to supply water to the faucet. But we also want a water supply line that goes behind me to our shower. So we're going to be using a 3-way T. And what this is going to do for us is it's going to allow us to hook up our main cold line coming from the right side here, right here. And then our faucet line is going to connect on the top of the T here. And that's going to be feeding water straight up into it. And then this left side here is what's going to continue onto the shower. So this worked out really perfectly, and I'm going to install the T fitting onto the faucet line right now. So now that we have our T in, my plan is to have the cold water here up above the hot water so that they don't crisscross and I can keep my pipes flat. So on this left side here, that's going to be going towards the shower. I'm actually going to have a shutoff valve. This way, if we ever need to work on, say, the shower, but we still want running water to our sink, all I'd have to do is shut this valve off and there would be no flowing water to the shower. And I did that same with the hot line, so we're going to install these guys right now. Alrighty, so the filtration cabinet is ready to go. We have our hot line secured all the way through the cabinet, as well as our AquaHot screen wires and temp sense wires. So this thing is officially ready to go. The only thing is, once we get ClearSource in here, we'll just have to get this Pex A tube fitted to the 90-degree elbow that's on the other side of ClearSource. And yeah, I think it's going to be pretty simple. And then to mount ClearSource, since it's going to be laying on its back, I just popped two small holes in the back plate of the unit itself, and we're just going to screw it straight into the floor of the cabinet. It's not going to go anywhere. ClearSource is fit into the cabinet and screwed down, and it's very secure. This is our cold water line going to the sink, and the outflow side of the filter has an elbow that we installed yesterday. We are going to expand this, slide it onto the output side of the filter, and be done with the cold water out of ClearSource. Now that ClearSource has the cold line hooked up on the outflow side, this is the other end of it. So I'm hooking this up to my little doohickey that hooks up to our sink. So this is again coming from ClearSource. So I'm going to expand this. This was scary because it has to be near perfect length. And slide it on. Well, everybody, it's been a couple days since we worked on the plumbing. We've been really busy on a job, but we are back in here in the truck. We have 2 days to finish the plumbing. I think we could do it all today. Maybe not turn it on today, but get it done today. So what we're going to be starting with today is our water pump and accumulator. We have partnered with RecPro on our water tank, pump, accumulator, hosing, different things to connect all this stuff. So shout out to them. They are an awesome company with awesome customer service. So this is actually their brand 3-stage water pump, and it's a drop-in replacement for the SureFlow. Probably going to work just as well, 3 gallons per minute, which is plenty for us. and then just the standard accumulator to make sure that our system pressure is running smoothly. The other thing that came with our kit is this strainer. This is on the inside of our water pump. This will just catch any sediment or nasty stuff that our filters into the tank did not catch, so that we do not damage our water pump. Make sure this is in an accessible spot because you will be emptying this periodically. Alrighty, so we have figured out our layout. It's a little cumbersome, so I'm not going to explain it right now, but we'll show you. But first things first, we're going to be mounting the pump vertically. If you mount this water pump vertically, you want the head on the bottom. This way, if it leaks, that water will not drip into the motor. So we have the strainer on. You do not put thread tape on the strainer according to the instructions. And then this fitting right here is a 1/2-inch male NPT. So we have a 1/2-inch female NPT with a swivel elbow. This is a really cool fitting because it's just easier to thread it on like so. So it's 1/2-inch female NPT to the 1/2-inch male of the strainer. And then the other side of our swivel elbow is actually Pex A. We got these off Amazon. We'll link them below. So what we're going to do right now is we're actually going to line this all up, put our little tube on here so that we could start figuring out the other lengths. Okay, so this is the inlet side of the pump. Water is going to be coming in from the garage down here. So we made this piece to the length we think we need to join these two. Pump's going to be going down here. Okay, and that should work perfectly with an elbow. So we got our pump mounted horizontally on a vertical wall here. The RecPro water pump is really nice. It has rubber feet, so it bumps it off the wall, and those rubber feet will help with vibration when the pump is running. So the pump itself doesn't loosen fittings up, and it will be quieter. We got our positive and negative wire here, easily accessible. This is the outlet side. The bottom is the inlet side. So our strainer is accessible, which is great. And with that swivel female elbow down here, if I ever needed to change this line out, all I would have to do is unthread that, which is awesome. We have a 3-inch Pex A pipe to 90 elbow, and this is what's going to be running from the tank to the tank, however you want to look at it right now, from the garage. So now we need to mount up the flex tubing that is going to be going to our accumulator over here. So now that we have the water pump and accumulator mounted, we have our flexible tubing set up and ready to go to the length that we need. So to mount the flexible ID tubing to the fitting that's threading onto the pump or the accumulator to this 1/2-inch barb, we're just going to be using some standard, I believe this is like a 1/2-inch to 3/4-inch size hose clamp that I'm just going to fasten down with my impact gun. Like these, they're easily removable versus if we used a crimp ring, those things are very hard to cut off. Other tip too is make sure you have the side you need to tighten facing the direction you're able to get to it if you ever need to remove it. If I put this back against the wall, I'd be screwed and never be able to do it. So I'm going to have it facing upward, and I'm just going to fasten it down to start. And when tightening these swivel elbows down, just from what I've found online, you kind of want to go hand tight. Once you feel some resistance, give it another 1/4 turn, and that's good. You don't want to crack anything, and since it already has its own seal, you don't want to over compress that. So you can see easy resistance, and now I'm going to do 1/4 turn, and that's it. Also want to make sure, since this is a pressurized line, just to make sure there's no resistance on the tubing itself, we're going to hose clamp it here, and this tube is very freely moving, which is really great. Because if there was pressure and a kink, I don't know if it would actually affect water flow or anything like that. I don't want any fittings coming loose, and I don't want any water pressure being affected. So nice rounded bend. And now to finish off connecting the cold water line, we are making this up and over run going from the accumulator tank to a 3-way T. Water in from the tank covers one side of the T. Here in my hands, got two very funky looking hot water line pieces, and it's for good reason. This is basically coming around our heat exchangers, and then this is going up into our AquaHot unit. So right here is a Pex B crimp fitting 90-degree elbow. The Pex tubing coming out of AquaHot is Pex B, 1/2-inch inside diameter tubing, and according to ProPex and Upener and all the companies that do Pex A, it is acceptable to crimp fit a ring onto Pex A to Pex B tubing. So that's what we have here is Pex A tubing with a crimp ring to a Pex B fitting. And this is allowing us to have no threads from AquaHot 90 degree straight into our Pex A system. Here's a better visual of the funky hot water line we created running from AquaHot into our sink and so on. It's got the weird shape to wrap around the heat exchanger and honestly keep things a little bit tidier. Sorry, but the footage connecting the hot and cold water lines to AquaHot was lost, but just know it was a simple crimp fitting that attached our Pex A tubing to the Pex B tubing coming out of AquaHot itself. Now that we have everything set up plumbing wise inside of the living space, it's time to work on the tank. We got this massive, I believe it's 94-gallon tank from RecPro. Yet again, go RecPro. And we're super excited to install this thing. We're going to secure it very well, and it's actually a blank tank. So we actually have to put our own fittings in. We're going to be using a bulkhead fitting, a brass fitting, also called a hushing. So yeah, I'm going to show you guys how we're doing that and why we're doing it. So the bottom of this is a female NPT 1/2 inch. And what's going to be happening is this rubber gasket is going to be going on the inside of the tank, sandwiching to the inside of the tank. And then this gasket's going to slide over this male 3/4 inch here, and then thread down to create a compressed seal to the tank. This is what it's going to look like when it's sandwiched to the tank. So this gasket will be inside the tank, this will be on top, and it's going to squeeze itself together. And then as for the fittings, like I said, this is the completed bulkhead fitting. The inside is 1/2 inch NPT. This is female. So I have a male 1/2 inch NPT with Pex A on the other side. So this on the inside of the tank is going to thread together like so, and then we're going to have Pex going down into the tank. For the top of the tank, disregard the 3/4 inch exterior. And what we need to focus on is the 1/2 inch NPT goes all the way from bottom to top through the bulkhead fitting. Why is that great? Because I have a 1/2 inch NPT male that threads right on to the inside of the bulkhead fitting, creating a 90-degree elbow for our Pex A. So this is the whole setup. Pex A with a 1/2 inch male NPT to female 1/2 inch NPT, tank getting squeezed together with the bulkhead fitting. And then up top, we have the 1/2 inch male NPT going inside the female 1/2 inch NPT to Pex A elbow. I know that's a lot. It will make sense. Just break it down part by part. So for our entire tank setup, we are going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 holes inserted into the tank. On this far right side for you guys will be our tank sensor, which is going to be wired to our servo to give us tank levels on our servo screen inside the truck. This center hole right here is going to be our suction line. So we're creating a DIY pickup tube, thanks to our friends Colby and Eric from Engineers Who Vanlife on this idea. We didn't want any fittings on the side of the tank. If there's ever a leak, that water is going to be going straight down to the ground. Doesn't sound good to me. With the fittings being on top, if there is a leak, it's going to be a lot harder for that water to get up and out. So I really liked this idea, and another reason why we want the blank tank. So this center point right here is going to be our pickup tube that's hooked up to our water pump, and that's why it's in the center. If we're ever tilted left or right, we're still going to have water always in the center, which means we will still be able to pick up water and not suck air. This is the same setup as our pickup tube line, and this is just our fill port. We're going to be installing a small PEX line right here, and the reason for that is just so that water is getting pumped in about 2 inches below the surface of the tank. Doesn't really matter where this is, it's probably going to be centered anyway. Another thing to mention, this PEX tube is going to be going nearly all the ways to the bottom of the tank so that if our tank is low, we could still pull water. Coming over here, we're going to put our air vent in this top right corner. It's going to be air vent / overflow. So the tank is always able to breathe, and on top of that, if we ever do fill too much, there will be enough pressure in the tank to push water out the truck. We are going to be running this tube about 1 foot above the tank. I wish it could be higher, that's all we have. And the only difference between these fittings and our air vent fitting is we have a 1/2 inch male NPT that threads straight inside of our bulkhead fitting on top of the tank, but this is a 1/2 inch hose barb. We're just going to be hose clamping a clear tube to the top of this that's going to run out the bottom of the truck. And then the big question, well, how do we install these fittings if we don't have access inside the tank? This is the answer. 6-inch access port, 6-inch hole. It's going to be a big hole. I'll be able to get my arm in here, to tighten these from the inside. So those are all of our holes, and we're gonna get started. Right now I'm just measuring the tank. I wanna get the center point dialed so that when we do our massive 6-inch hole, I know that that hatch is sitting straight in the center of the tank.
That's huge.
Dude. I'm a little nervous to do this. I don't know how it's gonna feel, but only one way to find out. Alrighty. Oh yeah, I can live in there. Nice. For the bulkhead fittings, we're doing an 1.1/8 hole with the step bit. The step bit actually catches all the plastic so that it doesn't fall into the bottom of the tank, which is really nice. So here is our 1.1/8 air vent hole. We have the bulkhead fitting all pulled apart. Here's the bottom, the female end, with the gasket, right? So this is why we have the access hatch. We're gonna go inside, pop this out through the top, drop the gasket down, thread that down, and there's our tank fitting. Just like that. For the air vent, again, the top inside of this is the 1/2-inch MPT female. This is a 1/2-inch MPT male to 1/2-inch hose barb, not PEX barb, hose barb. There it is. Alrighty, so for the pump suction line, our pickup tube, we have the 1/2-inch male MPT going into the bottom of the bulkhead fitting, which is 1/2-inch female. The very bottom of it inside the tank is our Pex A. We're going to expansion fit a Pex A tube down to the bottom of the tank to pick water up. So we're going to thread this together just as a dry fit. You can see the bottom threading together. This is how it'll be inside the tank. So I'm going to reach around, pop it up, gasket down. And now the next step is, since we have our bulkhead fitting on the top ready to go, again, the inside of the fitting is 1/2-inch female NPT. So we have 1/2-inch male NPT elbow to Pex A. And this is how it'll sit. And then this Pex A line is going to go through our garage to our water pump. This right here is going to be for the fill port. I just need to drill this out and we'll be good to go. Alrighty, so here's our tank sensor. Got it off Amazon. I'll link it below because I'm not remembering the name right now. A lot of people use it, and the cool thing is these little wires are going to go straight over to our servo, and I will be able to monitor our tank through our Touch GX70 screen. For the hole, I did 1.25 inches, I believe. Basically just big enough for the bobber to fit through. So next up will just be pre-drilling the gasket screw holes and screwing it in. I was very careful not to over tighten the screw while fastening the tank sensor into the tank itself, and then jumped over to fastening in the tank access port, which I was also very careful to not over tighten with the screws. After marking the holes, I simply pre-drilled them out before fastening together. Very exciting news. It's time to start putting the fittings in. As y'all saw, we just put our hatch in. We also put a bead of silicone around the outside of it because why not? The screws did a very good job. Just be careful when you do tighten it in and go in a diagonal pattern so you don't mess up any spots. But anyway, we're going on to our tank fittings now. So this is our 1/2-inch NPT male going into the bottom of our 1/2-inch NPT female. I already put the PEX connection on. This is just for our fill port. I put this on just so that when the water is filling the tank, it's not just spraying from the top right up. I want it to be a little far down. And then this is our pickup tube. So same thing, the PEX is connected, and this is actually what's going to be pulling water from our tank and going to our water pump. So what we're going to do now is we're going to put some pipe tape on this and start fastening everything together. So we Teflon taped the bejeepers out of it, and it's time to put this little guy in. We also fastened the Pex A 1/2 inch male MPT to 1/2 inch female in. Got probably 2 threads left. We did about 1.5 turns of threads with the wrench, and it was pretty tight, so I was happy with that.
It's funny. It's not gonna mess the tape up, probably not.
Sorry for the dark footage, but here I am putting the actual fitting together. And really quickly, here's a time lapse of our tank mounting location. We decided to build a box that will sit around the tank, allowing for expansion and contraction depending on the climate we are in. The box has been absolutely flawless for the year since we built it. This was a long night, so sorry again for the poor footage. We were on a tight timeline and really needed this done. We decided to install our fill port on the inside of the truck. We didn't want one on the outside for numerous reasons. So here I am drilling out a hole to mount our fill port, which was a simple on-off ball valve with quick release on one side and Pex A on the other. Our Pex A on the back side will run over to our tank, which will be how we fill our water. Alrighty guys, so we got the tank in the bed, under the bed as you can see, and we're ready to start putting the fittings on. So we have our fill port here. We have our suction line to the pump here. We have our air vent here. We have our tank hatch here. And we're actually going to have a shelf above the water tank. This way we could still utilize the space that's above the tank for storage. So that's going to be the tricky part, is figuring out the height we want. We're just going to keep it right above the pipe. But I kind of need to envision where all these lines are going to go so that I could pre-plan it onto the shelf, since we're going to be drilling some holes. So these two are going to end up with an elbow somewhere right in this vicinity so that they could go up and over the top of the tank cabinet here. So I'm going to put some PEX lines on with some elbows, and then I'm going to create some verticals to hopefully where I want them to go. Alrighty, so we're almost ready to put our shelf on. We have our, one of these is our inlet, and then one of these is suction from the pump. Got our elbows ready to go. And as you guys saw last night, we installed our air vent with a 1/2 inch barb on top. So this will be our air vent slash overflow if we ever fill the tank too much, and it also will allow it to breathe with elevation fluctuations, stuff like that. So I'm just using some clear 1/2 inch inside diameter tubing with a hose clamp, and I'm just going to tighten it on down. And here's putting the shelf in, the moment of truth. I notched out a cutout so the plumbing lines can run from under the shelf and up to the inlet line, and that line supplies water to our entire system, as well as our flexible air venting tube, and it worked out perfectly. The shelf is fastened to the tank box with pocket screws, since there won't be much weight up there. And boom, just like that, the connections are made to and from the tank. So now that we've got our sink up and running, it's time to start working on our shower stall. And the first thing that we need to do is get our new toilet ready. So we have the Cuddy composting toilet by Compo Closet right here. We haven't even unpackaged it yet, so we're really excited to see what it looks like, see how small it is, and finally use it. Alright, so we're 2 box layers deep right now, and we are finally reaching the toilet. Besides the puns included with the Cuddy, well done you guys. We got a little instruction sheet here, and some more box layers to open. Okay. So, here is the toilet. Say hello to our new friend, more like Chrissy's friend, because I usually just use the bathroom outside, but it's very nice for me when I'm in cities. So now that we have the toilet unpackaged, you can see how small it is in relation to me. That was one of the biggest things for getting this toilet, was how compact the size is. Very easy to take in and out of our shower when we want to shower, because we don't want to leave a toilet in a shower stall that's already small to start with. It's very lightweight. It only weighs about 21 pounds, so that's extremely nice. With the added compost and maybe a full urine jug, it will add a few pounds, but still very easy for either of us to empty it out. The urine jug is 1.7 gallons, which is about a half a gallon smaller than our previous composting toilet. But in reality, what is that at? 1p less, maybe 2p's less. So that's not a big deal at all. And I'm not really sure how big the composting bin was on our other composting toilets, but this one is fairly large, and I think it's still going to be about a month's worth of compost in there, which is plenty of time and not something I can complain about. I'm very excited to see how this toilet works. We have not used it before. We do have some friends that like it, but since we did use our Nature's Head full time in our van and we knew exactly how that worked, I will be interested to compare them and give you guys a good idea of how it performs. What is going on? We are installing our shower drain and finally installing officially the shower. So I got my 2 3/4 inch hole saw on, and I'm actually going to drill out our drain hole right now. We already pre-drilled the hole to see where it's going to land. It's perfect. Let's do it.
Oh, that's a great start, yeah.
That was fast.
Whoa.
Alrighty, so we have the shower all fixed in and we have the plumbing lines ran behind the shower, which is really exciting. So it's time for our drain. Just got this drain off of Amazon. 2 7/8 wide flange. And then for the bottom of the drain, there's going to be so this is sitting in our shower pan. Gasket is going to go on the very bottom, like so. And then there's a little paper gasket, just to minimize abrasion on the gasket, and then the actual nut itself. This is all going to be underneath the shower pan. This is what's going to be holding the drain to the shower, okay? Like that. And our floor is pretty thick. This drain is not deep enough to get any fittings connected to on the bottom. So we bought a standard 1.5 inch tailpipe. How does the tailpipe connect into our drain? So there's a little plastic gasket O-ring with a little lip on it. And that just sits in there like so. And then the tailpipe has a wider flange on this base here. And they just slide together like that. And then to tighten it all down, the drain also came with this nut that's going to slide all the way over the tailpipe and tighten into the bottom of the drain. This is what's going to be coming out the bottom of the truck. Alrighty, so here is the drain assembly with the tailpipe. So we have the drain to rubber gasket to paper gasket to drain nut, I guess you want to call it. And then the tailpipe again is connected with that little plastic flange that's inside of this nut now, all secured to the base of the drain. And then to go out the truck, we do not have a gray tank. This will be draining to the ground. All right, so here we are under the truck. We got the drain protruding out right here, and it's a small little hole. But we bought a really cool plumber's wrench that's narrow enough to fit in the hole so that I could tighten the nut down. So we're going to put a bead of clear silicone underneath the shower drain here, and then we're just going to drop it down. And there we go. So it's finally time to start plumbing our shower. So you can see our hot and cold line, which is insulated because it's coming behind the shower out of our cabinets. And our mixing valve is going to be mounted right here. So what we're actually going to do is we got a vertical board of cedar here, and we're just going to pocket screw it in. And this is what our valve is mounted to. So it's a 4-sided valve, of course. The bottom would be for a tub faucet. We just plugged that with a 1/2 inch plug. And then on the left and the right side, we have 1/2 inch MNPT that threads into the valve, elbowed to Pex A. And then on the top, 1/2 inch MNPT threaded in with just a straight Pex A coming up. Of course, it's going to be mounted like this, but I'm just going to show you guys how it is sitting in here. So it'll be like this. PEX lines will come straight in, and then this top PEX line is going to be coming up and into another fitting for our shower arm to shower head water supply. So we need to pocket screw the back side of this fix it into our studs, and we'll be good to go. The cedar board was a perfect fit between our framed out back wall, and this plumbing wall will always be super accessible by just removing the 1/4-inch plywood that is covering the exterior of this wall if we ever need to do maintenance. After figuring out the line lengths, we got to work cutting and installing the fittings to our water lines. The mixing valve and shower arm hole were already pre-cut by the shop that welded our shower together, which was very nice of them. It's a serious pain drilling through the stainless steel, and thankfully all the holes lined up perfectly. Alrighty guys, so now that we have the valve hot and cold in, we need to work on the water going up out of the valve to our shower arm and shower head. So here's our shower arm, just a standard stainless steel shower arm from Home Depot. But this is the fitting that we're using. It's a drop ear Pex A 90 degree. I don't know if you'd call it an elbow, but kind of an elbow. So it has Pex A that's going to come from the valve into the bottom of this. And then the shower arm threads straight into here. The reason you want something like this is, as you can see, there are 3 points of contact. So we're going to do the same thing as the valve. I am showing you guys this in reverse. The shower is this way, but it's going to mount on the wall like that. And now you have 3 screw locations for your shower arm to fit to. Right? So it's going to be like this through the shower. This stud will be what we screw the ears into. And here's the mixing valve assembly with internal pieces and cover plate / knob. Alrighty, so now that our mixing valve and handle and everything's all put together and tightened in, it's all nice and secure, it's time to put up our shower head. So we partnered with Brondell on these awesome Core A heads. This is going to screw onto our shower arm, and then the Core A is going to magnetize on pretty hardcore. This has an O-ring inside, so you don't need thread tape. Okay, let's take everything out. You ready? Oh, it works. That's not the scary part. The scary part is making sure there's no leaks now. Okay, we got a shower. 4 years after moving into a vehicle, we have a shower. Now, let's go check the water lines, because now that the shower is operating, there is water throughout the system and it's all pressurized. So we would know if it's leaking.